I had to die to understand why I was even alive. It sounds crazy, I know, but it's the honest truth. Before all this, my life was normal, maybe just like yours. My name was Hannah, and the best part of my day was walking my dog, Toby, in the park at sunset. You could almost taste the peace in the air. The sky would bleed into these incredible shades of orange and pink, and the light would filter through the trees, making everything look golden. It was our time. My time to just breathe, to feel grateful. I'd pray, just simple, quiet conversations with God. I thought I was safe there. I thought I was doing everything right. But one night, the world's darkness found me in my little corner of peace. The air felt heavy, colder. Toby, my brave little guy, started whimpering, staying close to my legs instead of chasing his ball. That's when I heard it. Not a loud noise, just a twig snapping in the trees behind me. My blood ran cold. I turned, my heart pounding in my throat, and saw a shadow detach itself from the others. And in a single, blinding heartbeat, it was all over. Before my world ended in that park, it was just spinning on a loop. I worked as a project manager at a mid-sized marketing firm. You know the kind. Gray cubicles, the smell of burnt coffee, and meetings that could have been an email. I was good at my job. I organized things. I made sure deadlines were met and clients were happy. On paper, I was a success, a responsible adult. But my life felt like a checklist I was just going through. Wake up, work, gym, microwave dinner, Netflix, sleep, repeat. My apartment was clean, my bills were paid, but my soul felt dusty, like a room no one had entered for years. I had friends, the kind you see for brunch on Sundays. We'd take smiling photos, post them online with captions like, "Sunday fun day with my girls," and then go back to our separate lives. Here's something I never told them. While I was liking their engagement photos and buying baby shower gifts, a cold knot of envy would twist in my stomach. I'd scroll through their perfect-looking lives on my phone at night, and my own life felt so small, so quiet. I felt like I was watching a movie of what life was supposed to be, but I was stuck in the audience. I was ashamed of that feeling. A good person isn't supposed to feel that way, right? Even my phone calls with my mom felt like a script. Yes, I'm eating well. No, I'm not dating anyone. Yes, work is fine. We never talked about the important things. We never talked about the fact that my dad's absence had left a hole in our family that we just pretended wasn't there. We were just two people saying words, avoiding the silence in between. That silence was deafening. Those walks with Toby at sunset, they weren't just a peaceful routine. They were my escape. It was the only time of day I felt like I wasn't performing. Out there, with the sky on fire, I'd look up and ask the question that haunted me in the quiet moments. God, is this it? Is this all there is for me? I was smiling on the outside, but I was screaming on the inside. I thought the biggest danger in my life was dying alone with a half-finished checklist. I had no idea that a real, physical danger was waiting. But what happened after my heart stopped beating wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the answer to that very question. Do you think it's possible to live a good life and still be completely lost? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened next, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. I'll be sharing more of my story, and others like it, very soon. Looking back, it's like the universe was trying to warn me. The signs were all there, like little red flags planted along my path, and I just walked right past them. It started small about a week before. Whispers on the local news about a string of robberies in neighborhoods not far from mine. I'd see the headlines on my phone, feel a brief chill, and then just scroll on. It was someone else's problem. It's always someone else's problem, isn't it? Until it's yours. But then it got closer. I was in the park, a few days before that final walk, and I saw a man sitting on a bench near the woods. He wasn't doing anything wrong, just sitting there. But his stare, it felt hollow. His eyes were like two dark tunnels, and I felt like he was looking right through me. I pulled Toby's leash tighter, my hand suddenly slick with sweat, and I took a different path back to my car. I told myself I was being paranoid, just a single woman being overly cautious. I wish I had listened to that paranoia. That night, the nightmares began. They weren't the typical monster under the bed kind. They were worse. They were dreams of suffocating loneliness. I'd be walking in that same park, but it was pitch black, and no matter how loud I screamed, no sound would come out. I'd wake up with my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest, the silence of my apartment feeling like a physical weight on top of me. I blamed it on stress from work. What a fool I was. Even Toby knew something was wrong. My brave, happy little dog started acting strange. He, who lived for his walks, would whine at the door and then back away when I picked up his leash. He started sleeping on the floor right beside my bed, pressing against me, as if he was trying to protect me from something I couldn't see. I just thought he was feeling sick. I even made an appointment with the vet for the following week. He was trying to tell me, and I couldn't understand his language. The day it happened, the feeling was undeniable. It was a Tuesday. The sky was a strange, bruised purple gray, even though the sun was out. It felt like the world was holding its breath. I remember getting a text from my friend Sarah canceling our dinner plans. "Feeling under the weather," she wrote. A part of me was almost relieved. The thought of putting on a happy face and making small talk felt impossible. But the biggest sign, the one that haunts me the most, was my mom. She called me just as I was clipping Toby's leash on. I saw her name flash on the screen. I remember my thumb hovering over the green button, and I let it go to voicemail. I just didn't have the energy for that scripted conversation. Not that day. I told myself I'd call her back later. I never got the chance. So I walked to the park. I thought the sunset would fix me. I thought the quiet prayer would chase away the darkness I was feeling inside. I walked down that familiar path, Toby trotting nervously by my side, and that's when I saw him. The same man from the bench. He was standing by the edge of the woods, a dark silhouette against the dying light. Every single cell in my body screamed at me to turn around, to run. It was a primal animal instinct. But the rational part of my brain, the part that organized spreadsheets and answered emails, told me I was being ridiculous. He was just a person. This was my park. I had a right to be here. That was the last thought I had as a normal person living a normal life. But what happened next was worse than any nightmare I could have ever imagined. Do you think we have an intuition for a reason? Should we always listen to that little voice, even when it seems irrational? Let me know in the comments. And if you need to know what happened in those final moments, and what came after, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I have so much more to share. He didn't run at me. He just moved. It was a smooth, predatory glide, like a shark cutting through water. The space between us closed in an instant. My feet felt like they were cemented to the path. My brain screamed at me to run, to scream, to do something. But my body was paralyzed by a lifetime of not wanting to make a scene. It was a stupid, fatal kind of pride. I don't remember the details of the attack itself. It wasn't a fight. It was a collision. A flash of cold metal I didn't even see. Just felt. A sharp, burning line across my side. Then the ground rushing up to meet me. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I lay there, gasping like a fish on a dock. I heard Toby barking, a frantic, terrified sound that tore my heart in two. Then a kick, and another, and then silence. The world was sideways. I could see the dark trunks of the trees and the last sliver of the sunset, that beautiful, fiery orange peeking through the leaves. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I smelled the damp earth and the coppery scent of my own blood. The pain hadn't really started yet. It was more of a deep, humming shock that vibrated through my whole body. I tried to move my fingers, but they wouldn't listen. And in that moment, as my life leaked out of me onto the cold ground, my final thoughts weren't profound. They weren't about God or the meaning of life. My first thought was my mom. I saw her name flashing on my phone screen just an hour before. I saw my thumb hovering over the ignore button. I would never call her back. The weight of that missed call was heavier than the man's foot on my chest. It was an agony worse than any physical wound. Then I thought of my stupid, dusty apartment, my checklist life, the brunches with friends and the microwave dinners, and a wave of desperate longing washed over me. I would have given anything, for one more boring Tuesday. One more meeting that could have been an email, One more quiet night scrolling on my phone. I didn't realize that my quiet, empty life was actually a treasure. And poor Toby, my sweet boy. I hoped someone would find him. I don't remember the ambulance or the flashing lights. My next awareness was a blur, a dream of muffled voices, of being poked and prodded. The world was a white ceiling and the constant, rhythmic beep of a machine that was breathing for me. For 2 days, I was a ghost trapped in my own body. I could feel the fight, but it wasn't my fight anymore. It was just the machine, working, while I was already drifting. And then, the beeping started to slow down. Beep, beep, beep. Each one was further apart. I felt a strange sense of calm. The struggle was over. There was no more pain, no more fear, no more regret. It was like I was holding my breath my entire life and I could finally let it go. The sound stretched into one long, continuous tone, and in that endless note, everything I was, everything I knew, just dissolved. And I was finally, completely silent. That long, single note of the flatline, it wasn't an ending. I thought it would be. I thought it would just fade into nothing, into a black, silent void. But it didn't. The sound didn't stop. It changed. It deepened, turning from a shrill electronic beep into a low, resonant hum. It was a vibration that wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was in my bones. No, I didn't have bones anymore. The vibration was me. And then, I felt a pull. It wasn't up, like you see in the movies floating over your own body. It was more like being unthreaded. Imagine every worry, every fear, every ache and pain you've ever had is a single thread woven into you. Now imagine someone gently pulling each one of those threads out, one by one, until there's nothing left but the space where they used to be. The weight of my entire life, the deadlines, the envy, the unspoken grief for my dad, the crushing loneliness, it all just lifted. I was weightless. I was free. I opened my eyes, except I didn't have eyes. I just perceived. And what I saw wasn't a place. It was a feeling made visible. A light, but not like sunlight or a light bulb. This light was alive. It was warm, like the feeling of the sun on your face on the first day of spring, but 1,000,000 times over. It pulsed with a color I'd never seen before, a golden white that didn't just illuminate things. It was things. It was the source of everything. And the silence, it wasn't empty. It was full. It was full of a peace so profound it felt like a soft blanket wrapping around my soul. The dusty, neglected room inside me was finally flooded with light. For a moment, I was completely lost. Where was the hospital? Where was my body? Who was I without my name, my job, my checklist? The panic tried to bubble up, a ghost of an old habit, but it couldn't survive here. The light just absorbed it, smoothed it out, and turned it into more peace. I wasn't Hannah anymore. I was just me, the real me, stripped of everything I thought defined me. And for the first time, I realized I was more myself in that moment than I had been in my entire 32 years on Earth. But it was the love that truly broke me. It was everywhere. It was in the light, in the silence, in the very fabric of this place. It wasn't a romantic love or a family love. It was an unconditional, all-knowing love that saw every ugly, envious thought I'd ever had, every mistake I'd ever made, and it didn't just forgive them. It told me they never mattered in the first place. I felt known, completely and utterly known. And I knew, with a certainty that went beyond thought, that I was not alone here. A presence was gathering in the center of that light. A presence I had spent my whole life talking to, but never truly understood until now. But what he would show me next wasn't about my own peace. It was about the world I had just left behind. Have you ever felt a moment of peace so perfect you wished it could last forever? Let me know in the comments. And you're going to want to subscribe and hit that bell, because what I learned in that light is something everyone on Earth needs to hear. The presence I felt wasn't a man on a throne or an old figure in the clouds. It was just knowing. A consciousness so vast it was both the light and the source of the light, and I was a tiny drop of water returning to an infinite ocean of it. The love intensified, and it wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was information. It was truth. And in that truth, I felt every question I ever had bubble up from the very core of my being. I didn't have a mouth to speak, but my soul cried out with a force that would have shattered mountains. Why? The question wasn't angry, just broken. I tried so hard. I prayed to you in that park. I tried to be a good person. Why did you let him do that to me? Where were you? The answer didn't come in a voice. It was a wave of pure understanding that washed over me, quieting the storm inside. It was a thought that was placed directly into my soul, a thought that felt more real than anything I had ever heard with my own ears. My child, the evil that hurt you was not from me, but the purpose that will bloom from this pain, that is. Your journey on earth was complete, but your mission has just begun. I didn't understand. A mission? What mission could I possibly have now? And then, he showed me. The light around me didn't dim, but it was like a new screen opened up within my consciousness. I was shown the world I had just left, but not like you see it on the news. I saw it from his perspective. I saw the hidden reality. I saw millions of people walking through their lives in cities and towns. But over each person's heart, there was a pulsing, dark shadow. On some, it was a faint gray mist. On others, it was a thick, ugly, black sludge. He made me understand what it was. It was the soul's sickness. It was every wound they carried, the bitterness from a betrayal, the sting of rejection, the slow poison of envy. They were walking wounded, and most of them didn't even know it. Then he showed me something else. Wrapped around their wrists and ankles were heavy, invisible chains. I watched as a man full of pride refused to apologize to his son, and a link in his chain grew thicker, clanking silently with every step he took. I saw a woman scrolling through social media, her heart filling with jealousy, and a new, rusty chain formed around her soul. These were the things that kept them from the light: pride, unforgiveness, greed, the barriers they built themselves. Then the vision shifted and my non-existent heart froze. He showed me the man from the park, not the attack, but his life. I saw him as a little boy, cowering in a corner, his small body covered in bruises. I felt the loneliness of his teenage years, the rage that festered in his heart like a disease. The shadow over his soul wasn't just dark, it was a gaping black hole. He wasn't a monster. He was a soul in absolute agony, so lost in his own darkness he couldn't see anything else. In that moment, I didn't feel hatred for him. All I felt was a deep, gut-wrenching pity. The vision faded, and I was back in the pure, golden white light. I was weeping, but I had no tears. I was just pouring out grief, for him, for everyone, for the world I never truly saw when I was in it. And I finally understood. My death wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a mistake. It was a key. My story was meant to be a key to help people see the chains they were carrying. The unconditional love wrapped around me again, and I knew what my mission was. I couldn't stay here, in this perfect peace. Not yet. The knowledge I was given wasn't just for me. It was for everyone still trapped in the shadows. My pain had a purpose now. It wasn't just my pain anymore. It was a message. Have you ever felt like you were carrying invisible chains? What do you think they're made of? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to understand the message I was sent back to deliver, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. The most important part of my story is what comes next. The understanding settled over me, not as a thought, but as a new state of being. My pain had been forged into a key. My story was a map, and I was standing at a crossroads that didn't exist in time or space. Before me were two paths, presented not as roads, but as feelings. One was the path of staying. It felt like sinking deeper into a warm bath, a final, blissful release into the infinite love of the light, to dissolve completely, to finally be at rest. It was everything my weary soul had ever craved. The other path felt different. It was a faint, cold thread leading back to the noise, back to the pain, back to the world of shadows and chains, back to the hospital room, to the broken body, to the life I had so desperately, and so recently, longed to escape. The thought of it was terrifying. Why would anyone choose to leave heaven? The presence didn't speak, but I felt the choice being offered. It wasn't a test. It was a gift. The gift of free will, extending even beyond the grave. And as I considered it, a final message was placed into my soul. It was the most important one of all. I do not send you back to judge them, but to love them. You cannot break their chains for them. Only they can do that. Your job is not to be their savior. Your job is to be a mirror. Show them the light that is also within them. Your story will be the spark. They must choose to fan the flame. A mirror. A spark. In that moment, I saw my mother's face, her silent grief as she stood over my hospital bed, a conversation we never had hanging between us. I saw the faces of my friends, posting their happy pictures, hiding their own chains behind smiling emojis. I even saw the man from the park, a lost child trapped in a prison of his own rage. They couldn't see the light from where they were, but I could bring a piece of it back with me. I could be a lighthouse for souls lost in the fog. Staying here would be peace for me. Going back, that could be the beginning of peace for them. And for the first time in my life, my choice wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what they needed. I took a breath I didn't have, and with all the strength of my renewed soul, I chose the cold thread. I chose to go back. What happened next was the opposite of my gentle departure. It wasn't an unthreading. It was a violent, instantaneous slam. The piece shattered like glass. The light vanished, sucked away as if pulled through a pinhole. I was falling, tumbling backward through a screaming black tunnel. It felt like being shoved back into a suit that was 10 sizes too small. The weight of my body crashed down on me. Gravity, bones, skin. It was a prison. And then came the pain. It wasn't the dull hum from before. It was a roaring, white-hot fire, igniting every nerve in my body. My lungs burned, desperate for air. A sound ripped through the silence, a harsh, guttural gasp. It was my own. My eyelids fluttered, heavy as lead doors. The first thing I saw was the same white, sterile ceiling of the hospital room, and the first thing I heard was the machine next to my bed. The long, flat tone was gone. In its place, there was a frantic, racing beep. Beep, 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 beep. It was the sound of a heart that had just been shocked back to life. It was the sound of my second chance. If you were given the choice between perfect peace and returning to a world of pain to help others, what would you honestly choose? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to know what it's like to wake up after being dead, make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications. The story of what I did next is just beginning. The first breath was an act of violence. It wasn't a gentle return. It was a drowning in reverse. Air scraped down my raw throat, a fire that made the physical wounds feel like a distant memory. My eyes flew open to a scene of controlled chaos. A nurse who had been checking my IV bag screamed, her face a mask of pure shock. In seconds, the room was flooded with doctors in white coats, their voices a frantic, overlapping buzz of medical terms I didn't understand. I was just a body on a table to them, a medical impossibility, a flatline that had suddenly, inexplicably, restarted. I could see the confusion warring with professionalism on their faces. They were looking at my chart, then at the monitor, then at me, as if I were a puzzle that had just solved itself. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't the one who solved it. I was just the one sent back with the answer. I tried to speak, to tell them, but all that came out was a dry, rasping croak. A doctor shined a light in my eyes, and for a second, I recoiled. It was so dim, so pathetic compared to the light I had just left. But the real shock came when my mother rushed in. A nurse tried to stop her, but she pushed past, her eyes wild. When she saw me, awake, looking at her, the sound she made is something I will never forget. It was a sob that was half grief, half miracle. She collapsed into the chair by my bed, grabbing my hand. Her touch was real, warm, grounding. But as I looked at her, I saw something I'd never seen before. Behind the tears of joy, I could see it. A faint, gray shadow over her heart. It was the shape of her unspoken grief for my dad. The years of quiet worry for me. the weight of that missed phone call. I saw her chains, and in that moment, the old Hannah would have felt guilty. But the person who came back felt only a wave of overwhelming love and compassion for her. I squeezed her hand, a flicker of strength in my broken body. It was my first mission, to help her heal. The days that followed were a blur of pain, physical therapy, and endless questions from doctors. But the hardest part wasn't learning to walk again. The hardest part was living in a world that suddenly felt faded. The food was tasteless. The conversations in the hallway about TV shows and weekend plans felt like a foreign language. It was like I had seen the world in a million colors, and now I was back in a black and white movie. I felt a profound sense of homesickness for a place I couldn't even describe. The first sign that I was truly different happened a week later. A young, tired-looking orderly came in to change my sheets. He was rough, impatient, and sighed dramatically when I couldn't move fast enough. The old me would have been irritated, maybe even made a sarcastic comment, but I looked at him and saw it again, a thick, dark sludge over his soul. I could almost feel the bitterness radiating from him, the weight of debt, the ache of a dream he'd given up on. I didn't see an annoying orderly. I saw a soul in agony. Instead of getting angry, I just looked him in the eye and said, my voice still raspy, "Thank you. I know you're working hard." He stopped. His whole body froze. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. The hard mask on his face cracked, just for a second, and I saw the exhausted young man underneath. He just nodded, finished his work in silence, and left the room a little softer than when he'd entered. It was a tiny spark, but it was a start. I wasn't just Hannah anymore. I was a mirror, and I had a job to do. How do you begin to explain the unexplainable to the people you love most, knowing they might think you've lost your mind? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to find out how I told my mom the truth, and what happened when I did, make sure you subscribe and click that bell. You won't want to miss the next part of this story. Leaving the hospital was like being born again into a world I no longer recognized. Everything was the same, yet completely different. The gray cubicles at my office didn't look depressing anymore. They looked like little forts where people were hiding from their own lives. The endless stream of happy photos on my social media feed didn't spark envy. It sparked a deep, aching sadness for the loneliness I knew was hiding just outside the frame. I had been given a new set of eyes, and I couldn't unsee the truth. My first real test came with my mom. 2 weeks after I got home, we were sitting in my living room. The silence between us as thick as it had always been. She was fussing, rearranging pillows, avoiding my gaze. I could see the shadow over her heart, the familiar gray cloud of grief for my dad that she never, ever spoke about. The old Hannah would have let the silence win, but I wasn't her anymore. I reached out and put my hand over hers, stopping her mid-fuss. "Mom," I said, my voice soft but clear, "you know, it's okay that you're still angry with him." Her whole body went rigid. She slowly turned to look at me, her eyes wide with shock. We had never used the word angry in relation to my dad's leaving. The family story was that we were sad, but we were fine. It was a lie we had both agreed to live. I'm not angry," she stammered, pulling her hand away. "Here's something no one knew, not even her." I saw a flash of a memory that wasn't mine. I saw her, years ago, standing in the kitchen after he left, clutching a coffee mug so tightly her knuckles were white, her shoulders shaking with silent, furious sobs. It was a vision, a gift from the light. "You are," I said gently. "You're angry that he left you to do it all alone, and you have every right to be. But that anger, it's a chain, Mom, and it's so heavy." The dam broke. For the first time in 15 years, my mother cried about my father. Not just tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs of a pain she had carried in secret for a lifetime. I just held her. I didn't offer advice or platitudes. I just held her and let her feel it, mirroring the unconditional love I had felt in that place of light. In that moment, watching the gray shadow over her heart begin to thin, I understood my purpose. It wasn't to preach or to perform miracles. It was to create a safe space for people to put down their chains, even for a minute. But what happened next was even harder. My old life started calling. My boss wanted to know when I was coming back to manage projects. My friends wanted to go for brunch and talk about their weddings. They wanted the old Hannah, the one who would smile and nod and keep the conversation light. I tried. I went to brunch one Sunday, and as they talked about venues and caterers, I saw the shadows over their hearts, the fear of not being a perfect bride, the jealousy over a friend's bigger ring, the pressure to perform. They were all wearing chains, and they were clinking them together like champagne glasses. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend anymore. My life wasn't a checklist anymore. It was a mission. I quit my job. I started spending my time volunteering at a local shelter, just listening to people's stories. I wasn't a therapist. I was just a mirror. I let them see the good in themselves that they couldn't see. I showed them the light that was already inside them, buried under all the pain. It was the hardest and most beautiful work I had ever done. I had less money than ever before, but I had never felt so rich. But the biggest challenge, the final boss of my old life, was still waiting for me. A detective called. They had caught him, the man from the park. They had his confession, and they needed me to come down to the station to make a final statement before the trial. As I held the phone, my hand trembling, I saw his face in my mind. Not the monster in the darkness, but the broken little boy I had been shown, the soul in absolute agony. And I was faced with an impossible choice. The world wanted justice, but what I had learned beyond the veil of life was that what every soul truly needs is mercy. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you seek justice for the person who took your life, or would you offer mercy to the soul you know is in pain? Tell me what you would do in the comments. And please, subscribe and turn on your notifications, because my decision in that police station changed not only my life, but his, in a way that no one ever saw coming. I walked into that police station, and the cold air felt like it was trying to refreeze the life that had just been returned to me. The walls were a dull, bureaucratic gray. The smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant hung in the air. It was the complete opposite of the light. It was a place where everything was reduced to facts, to black and white. A detective with tired eyes led me to a small, windowless room. He was kind, but I could see the expectation on his face. He wanted anger. He wanted a victim's righteous fury to help him close his case. The world wanted justice. He slid a file across the metal table. Inside was a photograph. The man from the park. His eyes in the mugshot were just as I remembered. Hollow, empty tunnels. But this time I didn't see a monster. I saw the vision he had given me. I saw the little boy cowering in the corner. I saw the soul trapped in a prison of pain long before he ever saw the inside of a jail cell. My heart didn't pound with fear or hatred. It ached with a pity so profound it almost took my breath away. The detective started the recording. "Ms. Miller," he began, "can you tell me, in your own words, what happened that evening?" And so I did. I told him the truth. I described the attack, the coldness of the ground, the fear. I didn't leave anything out. But when I finished, I took a breath and said something that wasn't in any police report. "What that man did to me was wrong," I said, my voice steady. "But the person who did it is in more pain than he ever caused me. I can't hate him. I can only pray that someday someone shows him the light that he has never seen." The detective just stared at me, his pen hovering over his notepad. I could see the confusion on his face. He was looking for a victim, but he found something else. In that moment, I knew my statement wouldn't change the course of the trial. Justice, as the world defines it, would be served. But I hadn't gone there for the world. I had gone there for my own soul. I had gone there to prove that I had chosen the light. I had to face the darkness that had tried to extinguish me, and, instead of fighting it, I had to hold up a mirror to it. My journey didn't end in that park, or in that hospital, or even in that police station. That was all just the beginning. The real mission is now. It's learning to see the shadows and chains on everyone, not with judgment, but with compassion. It's understanding that the person who cuts you off in traffic, the coworker who gossips about you, the family member who holds a grudge, they are all fighting a battle against their own chains. They are all souls in some kind of agony, whether they know it or not. My life isn't about a checklist anymore. It's about being a spark. It's about reminding you that the same light I saw is inside of you too, just waiting for you to let it in. So let me ask you this. What is the one invisible chain, pride, unforgiveness, envy, that you know you're carrying right now? What would it take for you to finally let it go? Let me know your honest answer in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what I share next. There are so many more stories of light in the darkness that need to be told.